Hello everybody and welcome back to the Preach What You Practice podcast with me, Josh Green. We're all about preaching what we live and getting our walk to talk. We are finishing our series on leadership L's, how to take your losses and turn them into lessons. And we're doing that by answering your questions. I've been asking people to send in questions about leadership and all that good stuff. So we're going to get into your questions today. Make sure that you listen all the way to the end of the video because I'm giving away this free book and I'm going to tell you how to do that. Help I Work With People by Chad Veach is a book all about leadership. The foreword's written by John Maxwell. So listen to the end and you can find out how to win that free book. Let's get into the questions today. The first question we've got is from my friend Renee, who lives in Austria. And he asks this question: how do we build church environments that facilitate an atmosphere where leaders can actually fail and get back up with grace? Or does it sometimes even cause, without building that atmosphere, does it cause leaders to stumble even more because we set unrealistic expectations? That is an amazing question. You know, leadership, a big part of leadership for me is vulnerability. And we have to build cultures, you know, whether that's in church, outside of church, we have to build cultures where people are allowed to be vulnerable. They're allowed to talk about their mistakes, where we don't judge them, where we don't jump off the back of them. Now, that doesn't mean that we build a culture that excuses bad behavior and all that kind of stuff, but I think we need to work hard at building gracious cultures. Kirk Franklin, who's a great gospel singer, he says this: the church has got really good at showing people their scriptures without showing them their scars. And people aren't coming to church because we've learned how to show people our scriptures without showing them our scars. So we need to work out a way of building a church culture of grace and all that kind of stuff. And I honestly think, I know it's my book that I'm writing and stuff, but I think Preach What You Practice holds a major key to that. Private ministry is so much more important than the public. Your private ministry authorizes and gives weight to the public. A lot of the times we sort of bring in leaders to be great at the public ministry, but actually we need to bring them in to be good at the private ministry. The next question comes from a friend of mine called Ashley, who's in Canada. Isn't it amazing that people listen all over the world to this? It blows my mind. She shares a really heartbreaking story of one of their pastors in their church has been sacked after 20 years, even though he was well respected and well liked, because there was some fraudulent activity with money going on. And she asked this question: how does a church recover when they lose a leader to some very poor decisions? Firstly, I'm really sorry that happened, and it's been happening a lot recently. Ravi Zacharias, Lentz, we've seen it all over the place at the moment. And I think one of the major issues, and this sort of helps answer Renee's question too, leaders, we need to choose leaders based on their character and not on their charisma or competency. Now, when it comes to charisma, we naturally gravitate towards people who have charisma. And there's nothing wrong with charisma. There's nothing wrong with being energetic, happy, you know, extravagant and all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean that somebody's going to be a good leader. That doesn't mean they're going to be able to lead people with love, that they're not got secret stuff going on behind the scenes that's not actually good. And again, there's nothing wrong with picking somebody who's gifted, who's good at the job, but actually that doesn't mean that they're going to be the best leader. They could be really competent at their job, but their character is way out of line. The second thing, and I think this is just good for mental health in general. You know, I talk a lot about Jesus asleep on the boat in the storm. And one of the reasons why he could sleep, and the disciples were freaking out, one of the reasons why Jesus could sleep in the storm was because he was prepared for the storm. Are we prepared for the storm? Because I think a lot of us, we esteem leaders and we hold leaders to such a high standard that they kind of get close to the God level. Now, our faith is not in man, it's in Jesus, right? So we need to be prepared. Now, we shouldn't expect our leaders to fail, but we should be prepared that actually they are human beings and we need to treat them as human beings, not expecting them to fail, but making sure that we are prepared that if they do fail, we're going to have the grace and we're going to know how to navigate that. Now, I got a whole bunch of questions in for this series, which is amazing. And I actually recorded a full-length episode with my wife, and it's exclusively on my podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. The link is in the description below. So if you want to listen to a much longer version of this, where we really get into the depth of answering these questions and some other questions that I've had to leave out for the video on YouTube, you can click the link below and you can check that out. But for now, let's get into this next question. The next question is from someone called Stephen, who's a friend of mine. He says, do you choose leadership or does leadership choose you? It sounds like a bit of a Spider-Man-esque question, are you born Spider-Man or does Spider-Man choose you? I don't really know what I'm talking about right now. But anyway, I think when it comes to leadership, I think there's a bit of both. I think you do choose leadership and I think leadership can choose you. There's a lot of people who are extremely gifted, just naturally gifted at being leaders. People just naturally gravitate to them. And John Maxwell, who wrote the foreword for this book that I'm giving away, and I'll tell you how to do that at the end of this video, so keep watching. John Maxwell, he says leadership is influence, and there's lots of influential people out there, so maybe they've got that natural gift of leadership. But for me personally, I lean more towards the idea that actually whoever's a leader, they've chosen that position. No matter how naturally gifted they are, they had to make a decision one time in their life that they're going to lead. And obviously, there's people out there that even if they never make the choice to be a leader, they're just natural leaders. They can't help but lead. But I think in the end, leadership is a daily choice. I'm going to lead people. I'm going to influence people, especially if you want to be a good leader. I'm going to lead people well. I'm going to be a good influence on people. Alex asks this question: how do you learn to trust your own judgment again if you've made a mistake? And do you need outside help to bring you into that? And I love this question because I think it comes back to what we've been talking about already. This idea of cancel culture versus grace culture. We are not cancel culture, we're grace culture. We're not cancellation culture, we're restoration culture. So we need to always make sure that we build cultures that allow leaders to make mistakes and to fail. Obviously not the big ones. But also we have to understand that when we say we're grace culture, grace does forgive, and we always hear leaders, I need more grace. Grace does forgive, but grace empowers us to live a holy life. So when we're asking for grace, you better make sure that after you've asked for grace, you're ready to live that holy life that you've asked people to have grace for you in spite of. And also, I think it comes down to the fact that if you're asking the question, how do I trust my own judgment again? Maybe your judgment wasn't the best in that situation. So I would say maybe you do actually need help in that particular area. Shout out to me, I'm not great at finances. So if I've made a poor judgment when it comes to finances and I'm asking myself the question, how do I trust my own judgment again? I need to actually think, well, actually, maybe my judgment isn't so good in that area and people outside can help me. Obviously, it's got to be people of character, like we said before, but maybe they can come in and help me with my judgment if my judgment isn't the best. And I think it gets rid of this idea leadership looks like this, one size fits all sort of leadership. And my friend Tim Funnell asks this question: how do we prevent the dangers of modeling a success looks like this, one size fits all model? I think it means that we try and do things collaboratively. We do things together. It's not the one superstar leader that we all look up to. Actually, if that leader's doing a good job, he's raising other leaders up behind him. And I think success is fulfilling your God-given potential. That's what true success really looks like. And so we need to ask that question, what is success for me? Because envy is the thief of joy, and comparison is rooted in envy. And so when we're envious of somebody else's thing, it's because we've lost sight of what our calling was. And we want success, but that success for that person, you need to ask yourself, what is success for you? 2 more questions and then we'll wrap up and I'll tell you how to win this book. Pete Dawson asks this question: how do we raise great leaders outside of the church? Often we raise the pinnacle of great leadership to be, especially Christians do this, to be inside church, to be the pastor or the worship leader. I actually recorded an episode with my mum, who's amazing, all about, and we talked a lot about this, about being a leader outside of the church or in between church and the community. So you should check that out. I'm going to put a little flashcard up. You'll see it. You can check it out there so you can learn more about it. But what I would say is, in the Bible, Ephesians talks to us about the fivefold ministry: pastors, evangelists, teachers, apostles, and prophets. Sometimes I forget it, but I got it this time. But those giftings are actually for a specific reason. They're to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. That's what the Bible says. I've given pastors, prophets, evangelists, teachers, and apostles to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. Now, often, modern day church has built this model of Come and watch me do the ministry. But actually, the Bible tells us these giftings are to help others do the ministry, to equip others to do the ministry. We need to equip them to be the best that they can be. And we need to equip them using our giftings to do the work of the ministry. And we're not trying to build big churches. We shouldn't be trying to build big churches. We're trying to build big people. Final question. Larry asks, what does washing the feet of those you're called to serve look like for you? And for me, I think servant-hearted leadership is the only form of leadership that the Bible sort of really shows us and that Jesus shows us. You know, Jesus washes the disciples' feet, which is a bit gross back in that culture because they didn't have the sort of socks and the shoes like we have now, so their feet got really disgusting. And I think it all starts with attitude. If you're too big to serve, you're too small to lead. And that's what washing the feet looks like for me. Always making sure that I've not got an attitude that's too big to serve. Nothing is too low for me that I can't get involved in and that I can't be a part of. Thank you so much for watching this podcast today. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Comment below what you thought your favourite question was or what your favourite answer was. I do a thing called Bar of the Week on my Instagram, which you can follow at @JoshSoSocial, which is the best sort of little segment, little bar, little comment, little phrase from today's episode. So comment below what you think the Bar of the Week was. Now, I'm going to give away this free book. All you have to do is screenshot you watching this video right now. Send it to me on the DM at @JoshSoSocial, and I'm going to be picking one winner to win this free book, Help I Work With People by Chad Veach. I'm going to announce it on next week's episode. Make sure you check out the last episode I put up with my mum. It's a really great episode about how to be leaders, you know, outside of the church, in between sort of church and community. It was a great episode. Make sure you subscribe if you're new. I'm so close to 100 subscribers. And finally, you can support me on Patreon. If you like these videos, patreon.com/preach what you practice. I've got exclusive videos on there that you can gain access to if you're a member. Thanks so much for listening. Bless you all. See you next time.